The chairman of NATO's military committee said on Thursday that North Korea's military actions in Ukraine are a strategic mistake. He also spoke out against China. Admiral Bauer stated at a news conference after a meeting in Brussels that both Russia and China have permitted North Korea to take part in the military actions in Ukraine. Bauer said that those two countries have stopped backing the UN when it comes to the Security Council rules about North Korea's missiles and nuclear program. It's a big shift that North Korea, which is the most isolated country in the world, is now suddenly involved and fighting for Russia in Europe. This means that the Indo-Pacific region is now unexpectedly linked to Europe in a way that no one believed could happen. That has big effects, he continued. Bauer called North Korea's involvement a strategic mistake because we don't know how well their army would perform. He stated that there are about 11,000 soldiers in the Kursk area being used by the Russians. He mentioned that nearly a third of these soldiers have been wounded or killed. He also pointed out that they are not being used effectively due to language issues with the Russians. On Monday, South Korea's National Intelligence Service reported through the Seoul-based Yonhap News that over 300 North Korean soldiers died in fighting with Ukraine, and around 2,700 were injured. The admiral mentioned that there was a problem with teamwork between the Russians and the North Koreans. He also noted that the North Korean soldiers were not placed in good positions by the Russians. Bauer criticized China for its position and emphasized that NATO should provide a strong and united response. NATO has clearly told China, "You can't have it both ways." China cannot say it wants to have good relations with Western countries and support the UN Charter while also continuing to fuel the war in Europe, he stressed. The relationship between Russia and China is still very unclear about its future direction, and its long-term effects are also very concerning, according to the admiral. The US and NATO support South Korea's claims that North Korean soldiers are fighting in Ukraine. However, North Korea has not responded, even though there are reports of their soldiers being killed or injured. The news about sending troops has become important since Pyongyang and Moscow made a detailed defense agreement last year. This agreement states that both sides must provide military support to each other if one of them is attacked by another country. Next month, the Russia-Ukraine war will reach its 3-year mark since Moscow started its special military operation against Kyiv in February 2022. Many people have lost their lives, and millions have been forced to leave their homes in the two countries that are fighting. Aid for Ukraine. At the meeting, officials expressed their strong and ongoing support for Ukraine. They also mentioned that the alliance's policy will remain the same, even with a new president in the White House, as Donald Trump is set to take office on Monday. General Christopher G., the Supreme Allied Commander Europe, stated that NATO's support for Ukraine is meant to last for several reasons. The first reason is that the countries in this alliance clearly want to keep supporting Ukraine. The second reason is that we have set up systems to make it happen. We have created steps and organizations that are meant to last, Cavoli said. Bauer mentioned that NATO's duties will not change on Monday. He pointed out that the ongoing support and systems currently in place are reassuring for Oleksandr Syrsky, Ukraine's commander-in-chief of the armed forces. This is important for him because for Syrsky, the war will remain the same regardless of what happens in the White House. The war is still happening on Monday too. He still needs ongoing support. As Trump gets ready to start his term on January, Europe is paying close attention to potential changes in the country's foreign policy regarding its support for Ukraine, since ending the war was one of his top promises during the campaign.